And then when you go to a public hearing, you don't count 16 people voted for or spoke for and 17 voted against or spoke against. It's not a popularity contest. It's the impacts and what it could do.
Okay, I think this is probably important to have it in sort of in minutes as well. So I guess we're like to call the meeting to order.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're meeting today on the traditional and is there introduction late items? Don't think so.
No, only that this needs to be clarified.
Yeah.
If he does his presentation and then at the end of it, still not clear,
Yeah, exactly.
then we should ask for clarification on that. Because this is what we want to do.
I agree. I think that's part of the. So do we need to approve the agenda?
Sorry, if I could just, is Kim on Zoom, Tyler?
No.
He's not on Zoom at this moment? Okay, if he does ask to join, maybe just let me know, just so I can record in the minutes if he was present. I know he tried to sign on yesterday, so I think there was a glitch in the, because there,
I think
so far ahead.
According to the one email, I think he thought we were meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I think it was a calendar time.
Yeah.
Anyways,
All
sorry
good.
to interrupt. Yes, mover and a seconder for the agenda approval, please, if possible.
Down move.
Second? Sure, thanks.
And adoption of minutes from January 9th.
Sorry, we just need to vote.
Oh, vote.
Yeah,
Vote on
sorry.
the agenda, pardon me. All in favor?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And approval of the agenda.
Down move it again. Get it going. Yes.
Okay. And any discussion?
Is that for the adoption of the minutes?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, I said agenda, pardon me.
Okay. Sorry, so that was moved by Judy,
Judy,
seconded
yeah.
by,
I'll second it.
okay.
And
Thank
I
you.
don't think I'm eligible to speak to them because I wasn't part of it.
No, okay, that's fair enough.
Yep.
Sorry, thanks.
Nor Dennis for that matter, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
No newbies.
We probably wouldn't be able to adopt them if that were the case, but you can vote on the minutes even though you weren't there, because it's a continuing body, so you're members now, so you can vote, but if you're not comfortable, we can defer it until we have enough members from the last meeting present.
Yeah, I think just as a point of order, honestly,
No, that's fine.
at the end of the day, if we weren't part of them, for us to say, oh, sure, that was great. That's exactly what I didn't say.
Exactly. Well, you're right. You weren't here to discuss it, and really, I think for the most part, what's in here, we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, and you know, if it's acknowledged that we weren't part of the meeting and these are not part of our thing, we're just doing it as a protocol, then
Yes.
sure.
Okay.
So, thank you. That means you
No,
seconded.
Yeah, and common sense, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
But if we don't, we get stuck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, can we approve the minutes then?
Yeah, sure, you can call the vote, yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I guess that means we're on to items for discussion.
Yes, I'll hand it over to our planning consultant, Ken. So he's got a PowerPoint. I provided some hard copies there. Previous members will have seen something very similar from last summer. He's going to share it on the screen here. Take it away.
Okay.
Super. Good evening. Just a little bit about myself for the two new folks. My name is Ken Cossey. I am the owner of KWC Planning Services. I'm a community planning consulting firm, works just for municipalities in British Columbia, and I also work for First Nations across Canada. I help bring in what's called land code. What that means is instead of Indian Affairs being the authority, the First Nations have taken back that control, and I'm just helping them set up a planning office and get all the planning tools in place. Just so you know, I do not work for the developers, I do not do work for the provincial government, and I do not do work for the federal government. I just work specifically for municipalities at this level. And I've been doing it since then. But I've been on my own since 1997. But we turned on first, right?
Oh, sorry, just to interrupt Ken, if I could, Kim is on Zoom, just so you're aware. So Kim, I don't know if you're able to hear us. We should be able to hear you if you want to just test it out quickly. In case
Sure.
it's got questions.
Kim, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, and pardon me, it's always a challenge signing on in the tropical.
Perfect. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Okay,
Well,
carry on.
Virtually anyway.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so you can see here's the presentation topics today. We'll talk about mandatory versus discretionary powers. That is very, very important, because as you go through this process, you will find that there's some people who will stand up at public hearings and say, we can't adopt that because it'll set a precedent. And that's absolutely false. That falls under the mandatory and discretionary powers, because we'll find that there's nothing in the legislation that says that because we do it on one side of the street, we have to do it for the other side of the street. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about what is an advisory planning commission. We'll look at the authority of an advisory planning commission. We'll look a little bit at development, because it's a two-sided issue. There's pros and cons with development, and this is where we as a group can look at the cons or the pros when we're dealing with these sorts of things. What we have now is we used to have what is called community amenity contributions. Now we have the amenity cost charges, which are being set up exactly like development cost charges, but the amenity cost charges deal with social amenities like fire department issues, police issues, libraries, daycares, that sort of stuff. You cannot use funds that have been generated with the amenity cost charges bylaw for operating costs. You can only use it for your capital costs. We'll look briefly at what the meeting format is. We've gone through part of it already this evening. We'll look at what the meeting expectations are. We can have a lengthy discussion in that about what is expected of the group. We'll look at quickly at some of the planning tools. We'll look at the Advisory Planning Commission recommendations. We'll look at the outline of the process, and then we'll have some questions at the very end. But as we're going along, if there's any questions that anybody has, feel free to stop and ask at that particular point in time, or if you want, you can wait till the very end. So, looking at the powers of council, municipal governments have two types of powers. They have their mandatory powers, where they are required to regulate, prohibit, or impose requirements or regulations. Those are generally outlined in the authorities given through the Local Government Act, the Community Charter, or other pieces of provincial legislation. A discretionary power is you can choose to approve it or not. And as I said earlier, the courts don't say because you did it for an area over here, that does not mean that you've created a precedent at all. Because the permits or the rezoning are a discretionary power, because there's nowhere is it written that you are required to approve a rezoning application or the issuance of any type of permit. It's a discretionary power that council has, and because of that, there is no such thing as a precedent. But that comes up quite on a regular basis, quite frequently. So what is an advisory planning commission? Local governments in British Columbia utilize the advisory planning commission structure to assist in the decision-making process respecting planning and land use management. The key word there is assist in the decision-making process. By that, we mean that you will be giving your recommendation back to council, because council's asked you to pass on a recommendation. And we'll talk about that process in a little bit. As well, it's a group of citizens generally who are active in the community, and will provide some non-binding comments on land use matters that have been referred to them by council. You can only deal with something that council has asked for you to look at. You can't just arbitrarily have a meeting and go from there and say, we want to look at this, this, and this. You can't do that because you have to have something referred to you by the council in the first place. So this is the legislation. It's contained within the Local Government Act. The council may by bylaw. Notice the word may. They don't have to do it, but they may by bylaw establish an advisory planning commission to advise council in all matters as we go on through that. So we've utilized that provision of the Local Government Act, and we've created bylaw 1006/2012 plus the village's meeting procedures bylaw. And we've just updated the village, the APC bylaw. I don't think it's 2012, 1006 anymore.
No, sorry, that there is a new one there, yeah, which
Yeah.
is in the most up-to-date package that I sent out, sorry, we didn't put it in here, but I think it's 1219. 1219,
Wow, 2025.
yes.
That's impressive.
Should I double check that?
No.
It's correct, yeah.
Okay, if you want to.
We'll trust you, it's correct.
Wow, that's impressive.
Thank
But that contains it all, so if you ever want to have a look at it, actually, yeah, because we did bring it to the table here, and we made some recommendations on that as well. So if you ever want to have a look at that, that could help you refresh what you can and can't do as well.
Sorry, since you had the tip of your tongue, what was that number again?
It's 1219/2025, and there's a link to it at the end of that orientation package that I sent out a week or two ago,
Okay.
yeah.
So what authority does an advisory planning commission or an APC have? Well, you have no authority. Good to know. But your input is very important and it is strongly encouraged. All land use decisions rest with council. Because once council gets all of the information from various sources, it could be the advisory planning commission, it could be a third party, it could be a public hearing, it could be through a development approval information process. No matter how they get that information, they make the final decision. So you are part of the final land use planning decision. So think of yourselves as the role, basically you're to provide input on all matters relating to land use planning. The input is not given as advice, does not form policy or set direction for the village. But you were strongly encouraged to discuss it, and as a matter of fact, when you get an application in front of the APC, the developer can come in and you can ask him or her certain questions. But no questions dealing with their business model or their financial arrangement. Because everybody has the right to go bankrupt. So we're not here to discuss their business model or their financial arrangements. But the land use issues side of things, yes, we can. So remember when we were talking earlier about development, it's a two-sided coin. It expands the tax base on one side, but also at the same time, it generates requests for new programs and services. So if you bring in 10 new houses, there's 10 more pieces of property tax. But at the same time, the services go up. And what sort of services? Well, it could be the use of the sewer and water lines. These are some of the impact things. It could be in addition to the school system. We have enough room in the school. How's it going to impact the natural environment? How's it going to impact the roads? How's it going to impact our fire department? How's it going to impact the policing services? These are some of the things that we can look at. So the overall benefits of development can be summarized into the categories of an increase in either the housing or commercial stock, an expanded property tax base, and an increase of potential new jobs for the residents. Remember, we were saying pros, but there's also cons. The costs can include but not be limited to loss of green space, congestion, and an increased demand for local services and infrastructure. Like if sewer and water systems, do we have enough sewer and water system to accommodate that hotel that's gonna be 6,000 people? Just an example. We don't have anything like that in the system, but I'm just illustrating that just so you get an idea of what you can start looking at. So how do you finance this development? Because basically, you're only obligated to collect property taxes, some development cost charges. So at one time, what they used to have, even though it was in the gray area, it was called community amenity contributions. And the reason I'm saying it was in the gray area is they didn't have any legislation to support that, but communities used the community amenity contributions aspect. And as a matter of fact, the ministry, even though they kept telling everybody officially it's in the gray area, they had a guideline published in 2010, 2012, as to how to set up a community amenity contribution process. So in British Columbia, the ability for local governments to raise revenues to pay for any of these new demands is limited to the use of property taxes, grants, and the old DCCs, usually DCCs, and now ACCs. Yes, sir.
DCC has been superseded by ACC now. What does the DCC stand for?
Development cost charge, and that's dealing with your infrastructure, like your sewer, your water, your parks, your roads. And if you wanted to, we can get into the fire department, we can get into the police department with DCCs.
No, that's fine. I just didn't see it broken down here.
No, I'm probably,
No problem. It's all good.
that's the other thing, I've been doing this for a couple days, so if I use an acronym or abbreviations and you don't know, please stop me. So what is an ACC? One of the ways you can look at it is you need this type of fire truck. Oh, where did it go? But you can only afford that type of fire truck. So there's a little bit of a gap between this truck and the other truck. So this is where ACCs can come into play. So what is the legality of the amenity cost charges? Remember I was saying before that the community amenity contributions, there was no basis for it anywhere. So now what they've done is they've legalized, can't use that term, amenity cost charges through Bill 44 or now Section 570.1 of the Local Government Act. So it's in the legislation now. It's a piece of legislation. So because of that, we can now look at anything, at any of these types of benefits to the village. Is it a social benefit? Is it a cultural benefit? Is it a heritage benefit? Is it a recreational benefit? Is it an environmental benefit? And these are all normally collected, like the development cost charges, at the subdivision stage or the building permit stage. Yes, sir.
I'm just reading through some of the paperwork earlier today, and there's $1,000 per unit was outlined in here. Is that currently the for the amenity CA? There was reference in here as CAC, but for the ACC, same thing, different acronym. It was shown in here at $1,000 a unit.
No, we can't do that, CAC anymore.
Okay.
What we have to do is come up with a ACC bylaw.
Okay.
And we haven't done that yet.
Oh,
It still needs to be worked on. It's a little harder to create, or time length. By what I mean by harder is because you got to go through the similar process of like setting it up as a DCC, where you're going to look at what the costs are. Where's your capital plan that says you're going to be spending $6 million in sewer and water lines? How much does it cost to install it? What's all your engineering costs? All those sorts of things. And we have to look at the village's capital and financial plans to start on the ACC side of things.
To see what the impact's going to be on the village big picture.
Yeah, yeah, and then we gotta break it out into, attribute it 90% to the non-residents, 5% or 10% to the residents. How are we gonna deal with this sort of big picture? That's a different topic though, and tonight, don't wanna get you confused with that.
No, it's good.
So now I'll turn briefly to just look at a general meeting format. And the meetings of the advisory planning commissions are open to the public. And if the commission is considering an amendment to an official community plan, a bylaw, or a permit, then the applicant is entitled to attend the meeting and to be heard. And when we have those types of meetings, they're set up under the concept of natural justice and fair play. They have the right to say no, and you can listen to them talk about whatever it is, or they have the right to say yes, and again, you have to listen to whatever it is that they have to say. So what are some of the things you look at when you have your meetings? There's certain expectations that happen. The first one is with your peers. Because because you have to vote in public, and you don't want to offend your colleagues or appear to be unconventional or uncooperative. So that's one of the things, peer pressure comes into play. So, but you have to remember that you've been appointed to represent a variety of views, and there's no reason why decisions should always be unanimous. If you feel that you would like to have something else added into it, you can do that. Whether or not it gets accepted by the table, that's another thing. And then there's the public. It's difficult to make a decision. Tonight, we don't have anybody in the public with a room full of people. Commission members should remember that the audience represents particular viewpoints, and they may not represent the community as a whole. Many times people fear consequences that will occur. For example, if you approve this, my property values will go down, or that will set a precedent. Proposed land use changes often generate emotional rather than a rational response from many people. Then there's the perspective of the developer and the business, his or her business. They're aiming just to be profitable. Comments such as we must have this many lots in order to make a profit, or as a sustainable application may not necessarily be accurate. Additionally, even if the developer were to share their business or forma with you, the community does not have to accept inappropriate development. The commission needs to review each proposal based upon its merits. And those merits, as we mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about that as well. How's it going to impact the sewer and water line? How's that going to impact the roads? How's that going to impact the schools? How's that going to impact whatever? Yes, sir.
So in this case, so we don't look at anything unless it's referred to us. Is there ever been a time when a proposal's gone to council, council said yes, and APC has never had a look at it?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what would those conditions be that we would never get?
I can't speak to that because that's a council decision. Because they make a recommendation, because what they do is when we get the report in front of them, we say that we recommend that it go to X, Y, and Z as a referral agency.
Right.
They have that choice to remove X and Y and just keep it at Z, or they can put into it X, Y, and Z and A, B, C, and D.
So that's open to the discretion of
Council.
majority of council.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I've just, I'm new here. Like, well, I'm new here, but I'm also just a year and a bit in Harrison, right? And I look at the place, 750 Hot Springs Road, and you see, a sidewalk and a nice boulevard, nothing, sidewalk and nice boulevard. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that I think at some point in time should come to the purview of the APC, as opposed to just being pushed through in council when there's a majority on council that may have that opinion.
Yeah, there's also the other thing too, that you don't get to look at is when subdivisions happen to do curb gutters and sidewalks.
Mhm.
That's generally just up to the approving officer and the developer.
Right, okay,
And that the approving officer has that discretion to ask for all of those things. And you gotta remember that the approving officer, that's the individual that's been assigned by the village to look after any subdivision application.
okay, would that be you?
No,
Okay,
it's Tyson Cook.
okay,
He's the administrative officer.
CAO?
Yeah, and he's also the approving officer.
All right, okay,
But I provide advice to him.
all right, so if we see something like that, then I have to speak up as a citizen, not as an APC. Is that?
Yeah. Because you're not.
However, may I just ask for clarification on that? For something like curbs and gutters, it's not within the APC mandate to make an observation. There's no mechanism for us to say, well, can we have some continuity in the curbs and gutters? That's not within our mandate, is that?
No, you're quite correct. What you can do though, is you can say you'd like to see a works and services agreement in place that addresses curbs and gutters and sidewalks.
I see.
That's a tool that you can
But
play
we
with.
can only do that for a particular project that's being brought to us.
Yes, Yeah.
So something has already been done,
years ago,
yeah, we can't do anything about it.
can't do anything about it. We can't, because usually when you're doing a subdivision or a development, that's when the developer has to pay for certain things. If they haven't had to pay for it back when that law was created, then the only one that can do it now is the village.
Yeah.
Unless that person is going to change something and they're bringing in a new development application, which opens up that process all over again.
Mhm.
We cannot, as a municipality, go backwards in time.
No, I hear you, okay.
And on another note, I mean, some of these comments that we would legitimately make, such as, is there the infrastructure for a 6,000 person hotel, a hypothetical hotel? We don't have the technical grounds to make that sort of a comment. I mean, how would we know whether or not it's a concern?
That's because you're looking at it and you're just trying to understand what are the impacts of me plunking down a structure right here in the middle of the field. That's one of the things that we all look at, because that's one of the things that I do as my job. What are the impacts? Is this a good
So
idea?
we would just ask if these things have been considered and if there's
Yeah, exactly.
some review of them, but we don't actually say this does or does not meet these infrastructure requirements.
No, you can't say that, because again, you're on the technical side of things, but what you can say is you need information that suggests to us, that gives us a peace of mind that we need a sewer and water study to prove that the reservoirs and the systems, distribution systems are all up to snuff to handle that extra 6,000 people.
But
And
pardon me for sticking on this point, is if we say, for example, this project, we are concerned that it'll exceed the infrastructure ability, then do we say we don't give our recommendation, or then do we wait for someone to make a report that says it does or does not stress the
Yeah.
infrastructure?
hold that thought, please, because we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay, can
All right,
I-
pardon me.
Oh, no worries.
So I think what we've done in the past is we can say, yes, we approve of this, provided evidence is subject to
Yeah.
documentation or verification that this impact will be
Yep,
sufficient,
yep, and that impact analysis goes to the council.
Yeah, exactly. Impact
Doesn't come back to
analysis.
this, doesn't come back to this table.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on to that thought, please, Kim. And then the staff function at the ABCs is to answer technical questions, be it either a requirement under the Local Government Act, meeting procedures, and or land use planning. So we're just here to answer any technical questions that you may or may not have. But the big thing is you have to remember is you should cast your vote that you feel, in your opinion, promotes good planning. You get 10 people in the room, you're gonna get 10 definitions of good planning. So what sort of meeting format do we have? Well, as we saw earlier, this is the agenda package. This is what it looks like. And this will be coming out all the time prior to, what is it, the second or first Wednesday of every month?
First ones.
Yeah, that's the day that's kind of held, and then if we have an item for discussion or a referral, I'll usually check with the chair, and then we call it, and I'll send out a formal invite.
Yeah, because I believe we got it in the ABC meeting or the procedures that the meeting can be called
Oh, yeah.
at the chair's request as well, so.
Mhm.
Any questions on that? So what are some of the land use planning tools that we have available at our disposal? One of the first ones you have is the official community plan. And where you look, what you have there is a lot of, is land that has been designated. A lot of people, unfortunately, the provinces even included. Let's back up a little bit. A lot of people figure that an official community plan is a glorified zoning bylaw. So they look at the OCP and they say, well, that means that you're gonna allow this in this area. That's not how it works. The zoning bylaw is the one that gives the specific site by site ability to do things. But the province messed things up a number of years back. The province had zoning bylaws first, and then they came around and they said, now we want you to have OCPs. And everybody was saying, well, what's an OCP? And they said, well, just take off the word zoning bylaw and call it an official community plan. Two different things, but over the years it's evolved. But there's still a lot of people that are holding on saying, well, it says in the OCP, this, this, and this, and they think of it as a zoning bylaw, but that's not the case. The OCP is created as a very broad designation. In this corner of the world, we want residential land. This corner of the world, we want commercial areas. Over here, we want marinas or marine activities. And over here, we want industrial activities. And then you get into your zoning bylaw, you'll see that in the residential area, you'll have R1s, 2s, 3s, whatever you want to call it. And those are specific to various lots, parcels of land. That's the OCP, or the zoning bylaw, is implementing the requirements of the broad designation for a site-specific parcel. So the zoning bylaw has all of your site-specific regulations. It deals with your lot size, which is dealt with at the subdivision stage, but it also deals with the building height, the width of the lot, all the land use regulations associated with it, the rear front setbacks, the side setbacks, all of those sorts of things, what you can and can't use in that area. And then there's permits. There's things like the temporary use permit and other things, but you have to remember APCs are not normally involved in those sorts of things. And again, we mentioned earlier, subdivisions, where the approving officer or the AO is only involved. It's very, very rare that it's outside of the approving officer's bailiwick. The only times that it can normally come to the council table is if they need to deal with the highway frontage requirements. There's a requirement that there has to be in the Local Government Act, it's got to be 10%. So say your parcel is 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters, and 10 meters. So that 10% has to be onto a road, 10% frontage requirement. And if it's not that 10% frontage requirement, and that authority has not been delegated to the approving officer, then the approving officer has to come to the council table and say, would you like to issue a development variance permit? Yes.
Back to just highlighting the 750 Hot Springs Road. That likely didn't go through the APC. That was likely approved by the approving officer.
Yes.
Okay. So how does that work? Like it doesn't seem right that somebody doesn't have another set of eyes on it saying, wait a second, there's no sidewalk here. There's no boulevard here. We're 8 feet from the road, another 5 feet, and the house is there. Like, when I came here, I went,
Yes,
the beautiful spot right beside it, then you get to 750 and Terra Estates, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna dwell on that for a second. But it's, every time I drive up and down this road, I see it, I go, it just doesn't make
Why did
sense,
that
and I wanna
happen?
know why, and I'd like to find a way, but again, that might not be for this, necessarily this audience.
we have
but-
that, it's been flagged and we're working on it internally.
Okay.
We're waiting for a different type of application to come along.
Okay.
To change it a little bit,
That'd be great, yeah.
so
Just
then we can deal
purely
with all of
aesthetic
that.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's function, as well as function.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, no worries at all. It's important to understand what the difference are, because when you're dealing with subdivision, you're just dividing a parcel of land up into a whole bunch, or one or two, or whatever. And then you get different types of subdivisions, so.
But I think that like we're going back onto that. Because the APC only recommends, okay, then if the APC recommended 10 different things, council could still go back and say, yeah, no, we don't want any of that, we're just gonna do it, right?
Well, it sounded like that was never.
But they
looked at
weren't-
by UPC.
But in this case, they weren't involved in the subdivision.
Yeah,
The council's not involved in the subdivision.
okay, I'm not saying about this
Yeah.
particular case, but you know, an approving officer or council could still go back.
When they refer it out to any agency, they don't have to follow their requirements.
Yeah. Suggestions.
Yeah, or suggestions, yeah.
Do they at some point have to explain why they're not following?
No, there's no requirement.
Yeah, I think they do at election time.
Hmm,
At election
They
time.
can't do there. It's,
make sure
Yeah.
yes. Yes, okay, fair enough.
so, and then some of the other tools we have, as I mentioned earlier, is the ACC and the DCC. And this is addressed at the subdivision stage or the building permit stage. And also the building permit stage, you're not involved in. It's again, just a technical exercise between the building officials at the Fraser Valley Regional District and this office. Excuse me. And all we look at there, when we get a referral from the Fraser Valley Regional District Office, is we make sure that they've met all the conditions of the zone. So that the building is 4 meters back or whatever it's gotta be, there's 2 parking spots, it's 10.7 meters high, that sort of thing. It's only got 55% lot coverage, all of those sorts of things. And that's handled by the building official at the building permit stage. That's usually the very last stage before the development happens. Okay, clear as mud? You have some questions on the building permit process?
No, I have questions later on. It's okay.
Okay, so what are some of the tools that are available? The temporary use permit, which is like a rezoning for 3 years. You can, council can approve a temporary use permit for 3 years. And then with the possibility of extending it for another 3 years. A development variance permit, where they're relaxing any of the rules and regulations. It can be a sign bylaw, it can be a subdivision servicing bylaw, it can be anything dealing with land that regulates land. The only thing you can't do with a development variance permit is change the use or the density associated with it. If you're going to change the use and the density, then you have to do a rezoning application. Then there's a development permit, which is handled, those permits are all handled at the council level. Then you have your OCP, your zoning bylaw, your development cost charges bylaw, your subdivision servicing bylaw, the sign bylaw, the business licensing bylaw, and development procedures bylaw. And then under policies, we do not have the community amenity contributions policy anymore, because that's out. Used to be 1.26. See, I can remember numbers too. But because of the change to the legislation, that doesn't exist anymore. But we do have a panhandle lot requirement. That's usually for the subdivision or approving officer. And the other arrangements that I was mentioning earlier, building inspection services, this is handled through the Fraser Valley Regional District. They are the village's building inspectors. And then when they receive an application to build something, it is referred to us. And all, as I said, we look at is to make sure it meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The building official under the legislation acts like a technical person, and they have a lot of authority, and they cannot be interfered with through politics. Same with the approving officer. So what are some of the land use planning tools? As I mentioned earlier, we have a DP, a temporary use permit, and a development variance permit. And these are all created, I'm just telling you this, just so you know where they're coming from. They're created under the authority of the Local Government Act for the development permit, temporary use permit. Temporary use permit, one of the ways you can look at it, it's basically a rezoning application for 3 or 4 years. So you have to be really careful when any council uses a temporary use permit, because they have an ability to go from temporary to permanent quite quickly. And then the development variance permit we just spoke about earlier. So this is again just a little bit further on the temporary use permit. You can set it up for commercial and industrial for 3 years with 1 extension for up to 3 more years. Just because it says you can have it up to 3 years, you can set it up for 1 year for the first time around with the option of looking at it again and then renewing it for another 3 years. Some municipalities use a temporary use permit as a way, as like a economic development tool. So they see if the occupation, home occupation, or whatever is gonna work well, and then they say, okay, that's good, it's been there for 3 years, now please move to an industrial park, or whatever it is. The development variance permit, as we were saying earlier, any zoning or subdivision bylaw, or any other land use regulations, except for the use and the density of it. Some people even go so far as to say, when we're dealing with the floor area ratio, which is how much how much of the dwelling is used by human beings, not including the walls or hallways, that sort of stuff. That's a way to measure density, but I don't quite go there. And then development permit, and it's just basically what it means is additional information is required to address any one of these situations. So development permit is a type of permit that is looking to do any of the following general issues: protection from natural hazards, addresses or establishes form and character, helps to promote an OCP goal, such as energy conservation, greenhouse gases, those sorts of things. Natural hazards could be, yes.
Yeah, I come from a little town in Greater Vancouver called Surrey. And whenever you develop property there, there's a standard for how it goes, like you say, the roads, the sewers, the curbs, and all that stuff. Does that exist in Harrison? Do we have anything that's standardized?
Yes, it's a subdivision servicing bylaw.
Okay, and is there a number for that, you know? Without putting you on the spot? Oh. I can look it up
I
later.
don't use very often, but I can definitely get that right now. That is, it is 11 something, 1184, that's your guess. Close, 1179. 1184 is the OCP, right?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, 1179.
That's scary.
1179?
Yeah.
2022.
It's on our, it should be on our website.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
So this is again, just for your information, in the legislation, there's 11 areas to issue development permits. And you can see the words that are up there, like protection, establishment, and then form and character issues. These are all the types of tools that are available to the council to use. Tenant protection, it's a relatively new one. So what does a development permit do? It's looking for additional information before development can take place. It's not an anti-development tool. It's you need the additional information before you can move to the next stage. So out of the 11 issues that the Local Government Act has, the LGA, the village currently uses 4 types of development permits. The lakeshore, commercial, multifamily is form and character. Hazardous, for hazardous lands and wildfire, that'd be like geotech. And then the wildfire, the idea of the wildfire is so that fire is trying to stop from coming into the community and at the same time stop it from going out into the forest. There's the riparian areas, the environmental side of things. This addresses what is called the riparian area protection regulations. That's provincial legislation. They require that and it to be implemented when somebody does a report by what we refer to as a QEP, Qualified Environmental Professional. That report gets approved by the province. They say, we've looked at it, it's met all the requirements, here's the number, then we can make our development permit tool, which goes in front of council, and then they stamp it and we're off to the races. All of the development permit requirements are laid out in the village's OCP in section 4, I believe it is. Again, here's your temporary use permits, like one of the planning tools. Section 5.2 of the zoning bylaw outlines how we address a temporary use permit. We can ask for security, and whenever we ask for security, we never ask for a bond. Never ever take a bond. If you're gonna suggest security, you always look at it, cash, or a certified check, or an irrevocable letter of credit. And the reason I'm saying that is there was a development company, can't remember if it was Cologne or Kamloops, maybe it was Colwood. But anyhow, they went bankrupt. And the company was from Calgary. And when they went through the bankruptcy proceedings, the judge ruled that the bond that the municipality had was an asset of the organization. So that was sent back to the process and divvied out to the whomever, to the bankruptcy process. So the municipality was left with a big, huge, it was called, because they were left with a big, huge hole, and they had a little plastic fence that was about that high around it for about 10 to 12 years, till they got a new developer in there. This is why I've always suggested you use an irrevocable letter of credit or a certified check, because the money is clearly out of their system. Development variance permit, well, we talked about that already. And then, so what is the zoning bylaw? The land use, it's a tool that is used to implement the village's OCP policies and directives as it relates to the orderly development of the village. We have, as I said earlier, we have land use regulations assigned for each zone. And if you're in that R1 zone, you have that consistency across the R1, that only this use and that type of use is allowed, no others. The various land use categories associated with the zoning bylaw, speaking in a very general sense, is residential, commercial, community, or any combination thereof. And right now, the current bylaw is bylaw 1115/2017. And it's created under the authority of the Local Government Act, section 479. So it's a legal document. 9 times out of 10, or actually 10 times out of 10, this is what occasionally the development permits will get you into problems in courts. But this is a legal document. An official community plan is generally treated as a policy document by the courts. But there has been some movement by some approving officers to use it as a reason to reject a subdivision. But it's not very often. And the only reason that the official community plan may get dragged into court is because under the legislation, you can put your development permit information either under the OCP or into the zoning bylaw. So if it's under the OCP, then that's the sections that the judge will be looking at. So what does the zoning bylaw do? As we said, creates land use zones, permitted and accessory uses, minimum lot sizes, setbacks, site coverage. Here's that Florida area ratio, the FAR we were talking about. You can get into the height of the fence, you can look at regulations for home occupations, accessory use requirements, temporary building regulations. If you want to put your house up or put up a new house and still live in your old one, there's ways to do that through the zoning bylaw. You got to meet certain conditions, looks at off-street parking requirements and off-street loading requirements. So another one of the tools that we have is the local, this has been updated too.
Yeah.
How an application is processed, and that's through the development procedures process. A development procedures bylaw is set up under the concept of natural justice and fair play. So we're treating everybody the same. So they can't come in and say, well, Ken Cossey said this, or Ken Cossey treated me like this. Everybody gets treated the same through that schedule and through the flow process. And it's created, as I said earlier, based upon the concept of natural justice, treating everybody the same, and the concept of fair play. You're letting people speak for and against the application, like we have at public hearings or community meetings. So some of the new planning tools that we have, they've been changed because of the housing legislation requirements, or not even that, but they haven't been utilized here in the village. They've been in there for a long, long time. Like the development approval information requirements, that's a big, long word. All that basically means is, what are the impact analysis? How's that gonna impact the environment? How's that gonna impact the roads? All of those sorts of questions. And then the wildfire interface and greenhouse gas reduction development permit areas. And then this came through with the changes to the housing legislation, is the amenity cost charges. So getting back to your question you had earlier, Kim, on the development approval information requirement, this tells you, that's one of the tools, I believe you have it in your agenda or in one of your packages.
I don't think the DAI bylaw was included in that, but I can send it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the tool. What that does is it's a two-step process. We have to designate the DAI area inside of the official community plan. And then the next step is when we say that we want this person to do a review of the natural environment or a review of whatever, all of the steps that they have to accomplish are inside of that bylaw.
Yes, although I'm trying to understand this from the perspective of the APC. This development approval information is part of the planning process, the planning department, and all of that review would already be taken care of by other
Yes, it would
agencies.
be. One of the ways you should look at it here from the ABC is you can ask me, did you look at this? Did you look at that? Or I think we should be looking at this, or we should be looking at that. That's one of the advantages that we have now, because we've just recently adopted the DAI bylaw. So now we
Yes,
can
but wouldn't we then ask for that on each and every item that's been referred to us?
we have to follow the requirements as laid out in the official community plan. I think it's either five lots or more. If it's under 5 lots, then it doesn't happen. But we can ask the developer to do it though. Whether or not they do it is another thing. But if it's 6 lots, then they have to do it.
I see. Okay.
And this is one of the new tools that's available and can be utilized and recommended at this table.
And Amanda, you're gonna send that out to us, or?
Yeah, I can send
Okay.
that out, no problem.
Thank you.
So DAI, I don't know why they ever came up with that long name. I just always refer to it as impact analysis. But a development approval information. So basically it means information on the anticipated impact of a proposed activity or development on the community without limiting the information regarding the impact on any of those matters. You see the 5 matters that are there: transportation patterns, traffic flow, local infrastructure, public facilities, community services, and the natural environment. This is a tool that can assist the APC, or the APC can make a specific recommendation to the council to set up a specific study. For example, if the way it works, I could ask as the planner, because I've been tasked to look after that bylaw, that if somebody comes in and they gotta do whatever, they gotta do A, C, and D. And I can bring that in and say, yes, we've looked at this, A, C, and D, here's the impacts. Or this is what the numbers are gonna say. And then you can say, well, yeah, but did you look at whatever, X or E? So then you can make a recommendation for council to set up that specific study. And that also includes sun and shade. So when you're looking at the height of a building, if you need to know, is it gonna impact the neighbors because of the sun area or shady area or lack of a sun area, you can do all of those sorts of things. And that authority is under section 484 of the Local Government Act. So it's got the force of the law. So some of your recommendations that you can make to council, you may make a recommendation to support the land use planning application with no conditions. You can make a recommendation to reject the land use planning application for whatever reason that you've decided that it's gonna be rejected. You have to give a land use planning reason as to why it should be rejected, not because I don't like it. It's hard for a developer to go out and figure out, how do I overcome what you don't like? Or additional information may be required. So you can do that. And then the third one is make a recommendation to support the land use planning application with conditions. Which is what we did with Mr. Baziak's, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like each one of them would have some sort of condition.
Yeah.
Attached to it usually.
Well, if there are conditions attached, does that mean it comes back to APC with
No.
response to those conditions?
No. That's it's still up to council to accept any of those recommendations. Because you have to
So
remember,
we would just be raising a red flag, and then that's the end of it, as far as the APC is
basically,
concerned.
yes. Yeah.
I see.
And it's the same with the other referral agencies as well. They could be raising a red flag as well, or they could, whatever. You're just one of the many referral agencies. And usually, part of the process is it'll go out to the referral agencies. We collect everybody's comments that have said it. They've said whatever they've said, and that becomes part of the public hearing package. So we always have the recommendations of the various referral agencies in the public hearing package, so everybody can see Ministry of
So to-
Transportation said.
Right.
Or
So
what
to be clear then,
said.
the APC would only review a given project once.
I'm sorry?
The APC only reviews any given project that's referred to it by council once and once only.
Yeah, unless council refers it back to you.
Sorry, say again?
Unless council refers it back to you.
I see. Now, on another note, where under what conditions would the APC not ask all of those A, B, C, D, E, and F to be covered and addressed
Depends on the
properly?
circumstances. Because
I
each
see.
site's got a unique variable or unique conditions, so in some
Mhm.
areas, you may see that it's already beside a fire hydrant, so you don't need to worry about the fire safety. Or it's already beside a sewer and water system, whatever. You
I see. Okay.
can't
Thank
just take it and say we want all of this, all of the time, 'cause each site has its unique characteristics. And this is what we're trying to capture. Yes, sir.
So I'm not that familiar with the programs here, so I'm a developer. I show up, I've got plans, everything looks good. I get a rubber stamp, I start building. Like, I know it's not that simple, obviously, but what are the various tracks that a developer you take coming into town to build? Do they just, they put it together, comply to the best of everyone's knowledge with everything that's being asked of them? They get a rubber stamp and they start building. They go to a point, then it has to go to council, or they get to a point, have to go to council, and then a public hearing. And then are we like the last breakthrough for them with the APC?
No, depends on the
I'm trying to
circumstances.
get a read on it.
Yeah,
You understand?
depends on the circumstances. If somebody years back could have done a rezoning application on the parcel, but never subdivided it. So Ken Cossey comes in, and then now I'm gonna subdivide that parcel of land into what the zoning bylaw allows me to do.
Okay.
That does not come to this table.
Okay, and that's fair. I'm trying to understand, yeah.
The only ones that will be involved in it is the approving officer and the building officials from the Fraser Valley Regional District. However, raw land, let's say that we're gonna put something right out here. This is where we're gonna put the new battery acid plant. Don't quote me on that. But that's where it's gonna go, and that's brand new, and then we go right through the whole process, start to finish.
And I'm just wondering where the gaps of coverage are.
Yeah. There could be, and if things
There's
are
no why,
really-
there's no, I guess what I'm thinking is, there's no oversight beyond AO and council. It's just, all right, we got this figured out, no problem, it's voted through, here we go, we're building.
From that aspect,
Yeah,
yeah, but there's also all of this referral, when we send it back, all of the comments come in and council has to go through them. And that includes the public hearing comments, that includes any of the referral agency comments and all of the legislation, and then a staff report.
Okay.
And at that point, the stamp is not rubber, it's brass, I believe. Rubber refers to kind of a mere formality, but there's due process, and we're part of that. And by the time the application is approved, it's gone through due process, including our oversight as part of that process. And then the stamp is not rubber, it's formal and proper.
These APC recommendations, this can also happen at the planning level.
When
But once
council asks for our input, yes, but only if.
Once the developer starts building, they kind of have their plans ready and everything. We can, APC can't come back or the council can't come back and say, oh, you have to change things,
Yeah.
right? So
Can't do
all that
that.
happens at the very beginning in the planning stage.
Yep.
Because if the APC says this and this and council says, yeah, okay, we agree, okay, Mr. Developer, you have to change what you're doing to match this.
Yeah. Or if they decide that they're gonna change, let's say they were gonna paint it red, and now we wanna paint it purple. And they're under a development permit, then they have to start again.
Right. Variance on that aspect.
And that has to be blessed by council.
Okay.
And when we collect the funds, the security, we take 1.5% of whatever the estimate is. We get a third-party engineer, third-party landscaper, whatever, they stamp it, and they say it's gonna cost $100,000. Well, we take 1.5% and multiply that 100 grand by 1.5%, and that becomes the security. So they have to meet all of the conditions of the development permit to get their money back.
Which includes the red paint, not the purple paint.
Yep, yep.
Okay,
So here's the process. you're asking, is the first thing we look at is if there's been an application received. It's reviewed by staff and a report is prepared, and this includes looking at any data and any additional information. Council reviews it. They get a report and they say, we want to send it to the fire, make a recommendation and go to the fire department, and go to whatever, whomever, whatever, they say yes or no to it. They can refer to nobody, or they can refer to as many people as they want. And it may include the APC.
Sure. And is there a threshold for the application? I want to build a single house. If that have to go to council or?
It depends on the circumstances.
All right.
If it's a bare parcel of land and they need to do a rezoning, then yes, they've got to go through this process. But if it's already been,
Within existing zoning, existing bylaws,
then they just go get.
I just show up with my plans and we get the rubber stamp.
Yeah, and away you go.
Okay.
So council reviews it and they refer it all out to all the different agencies. And then they collect all of that information and then they authorize staff, or at the council review table, they'll authorize staff to set up a public hearing. And this is where all of this information is collected from all the various referral agencies. So even though you guys may meet in November and not again until February or March or whenever, if there's a public hearing in between that, whatever you made a recommendation of here goes to that public hearing. And then once the referral comments and public hearing is held, all the information collected goes back to council. So what we do is after a public hearing, we look at all of the referral comments. By we, I mean staff, and we look at the public hearing comments. And we go through all of them and look for land use planning issues that have been identified. So it doesn't help when people say I'm opposed to an application. That's fine. You can do that, but it doesn't help with this comment. So, and then it comes back to point number 5, council can accept it with conditions, or they can reject it. Excuse me.
I have some questions.
Yes.
I think what we need is a summary of the things we have to make a decision on, because this is where we run into problems. We can do the conditions, we can do the recommendations that we recommend that they get a traffic study report or whatever, but what is the bit?
Okay.
And this is this slide 27, is this what we look at? Because this is where we run into all sorts of problems with this. We've got a plan. Is the planning tool, what is the zoning bylaw? Is this what we're looking at?
Well, you could look at that, but I would recommend that you look at that. You see the big words at the top?
Yes,
Impact analysis.
okay,
How do you, and whether or not, you don't have to follow this verbatim, but the big thing is whenever you're looking at something, how does it feel? What do you think? Is it a good spot for it, bad spot for it?
yes, now we've been running into all sorts of things last time about the height of the building. This is not in here. This is not in this impact analysis, the height of the building.
Well, yeah, could be
Between
public facilities, local infrastructure. It depends on what you're looking at, looking for. You're not gonna get something that says application X, we only look at X issues. Application Y, we only look at Y issues. You've got a whole gamut. The sun and shade issues, this is what I was talking about earlier.
Yes, no, that's fine. But as I said to you, we got into problems with the height of the building and whether it included, what was it? The
Setbacks?
setbacks,
Yeah.
yep, that's
Or
not in
step-backs,
here. Setbacks, height of the building, those.
That's right.
are-
Yeah.
Particularly
You gotta
when
remember
the application
what you're looking
is
at.
seeking variation. Pardon me.
Just a minute, wait, sorry.
When
One of the
the
things
core
you're
of that
looking at. Go ahead.
I agree, particularly when the core of the application was a variance, and the variance was a height variance. and it was referred to us. So we have no,
Yes.
in A, B, C, D, and E here, there's nothing that allows us to comment on the FAR or the height of the building, and yet that's what the
Yeah,
application is about.
Because you're only looking, you're focusing in on the word variance. Don't look at that word. How's that gonna impact what's around it?
So
That's the issue.
It's
Is you gotta
taller.
look at impacts.
Okay, so what you're saying is we have no say on the height of the building? Because that's what the variance is.
I didn't say that. What, you're stuck on this word for some reason, and I'm not explaining it very well, I'm sorry. But what you've got to do is, it's gonna be 45,000 feet high now.
Yes.
What are the impacts gonna be to that? Does that fit in the community? It doesn't matter if it's gonna be 45,000 feet. What you gotta say is, we are concerned, there's gonna be sun or no sun zones and shade zones. Where are these and how long is this gonna happen? That's the impact. The other thing is how's that gonna impact the visual look of the community? How's that gonna impact the wind around everything?
That doesn't come
So,
under.
if I.
No, this is why I'm saying, we can't give you just a checklist. You have to look at it, what do you see as an impact? Because this is going into this area.
So, this is explained, it looks different now than it did last time you were meeting, right? That's what you're getting at. I think also with, if it's 45,000 feet high, well, then we're gonna have the 6,000 or 60,000 people living in there. What's that gonna do to the traffic?
Exactly.
So we can't just go back to, we don't see that this zoning bylaw, which gives a height of the building,
Mhm.
we don't see that as,
No, because they're changing it. They're changing it from A to B.
yes,
So because they're changing it from A to B, what is the impact of this change?
Okay.
That's what it is. Everything is about the change. And one thing I will not do, although I want to, I will not put my recommendation on your report for you, because it's not for me to tell the APC what to do. That's why I leave it open. You'll see that it's always left open. I don't put a recommendation down at all.
so we're going back, basically what I'm saying is that we're going back into what we thought we couldn't
We
do.
thought, that's what it looks like to me, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Sorry?
We're going back into stuff that we thought we couldn't do. We're actually heavily involved.
Well, yeah, just as long as you look at it from an impact.
I think it's a matter of framing it the right way,
Yeah,
Up to you, you're the chair, you will do that.
but I take input from you.
If I can jump in for a second.
Yes.
The height variance, like to take your example, for example, someone wants to build 3 feet higher than they're normally allowed. So that's the proposal. That's the proposal you're looking at. You're not just looking at the height variance. That's just kind of the mechanism to get you there. What you're wanting to look at is what impact is that 3 extra feet going to do? Well, now they're allowed to build 8 extra units. Is there parking available for that? It's gonna be 3 feet higher than the building next to it. What is the
Okay.
impact to shade?
Okay, all right, so this is, yeah.
So you are looking at the variance in a really
In a
very broad.
broad
Backwards way.
scope of how that variance impacts the use of that land.
Yeah, okay. But I'm sort of, my problem is I was on the board of variance.
Okay,
Fraser
yep,
Valley,
yep.
And that is a different,
That's a different kettle of fish,
yeah, it is.
big time, yeah. So that's the big thing is, yeah, whenever you're looking at it, any of the zoning or the changes is what are the impacts? Because, just because they wanna go from A to B, there's gotta be some impacts of some sort. What are they? And have they been addressed?
Okay, so this is the master plan here.
What are the impacts?
Okay, all right, now I know where I am. Now, the other thing is, I asked, is the ACC, as you call it now, the council is going to adopt a bylaw for this.
Yes.
Who is going to establish the price for it?
That's what the research we still have to do. We just can't come up with a bunch of numbers and say it's gonna be X, Y, and Z. We have a process that we have to go through. We're gonna have, for example, we don't have a library yet. Do we want a library? does the community want a library? And then if they do, then how much is it gonna cost to assemble the land? How much is it gonna cost to build it? That, all of those sorts of things have to be factored in.
Okay, so you're saying that at this point, the APC had nothing to do with this at all?
No, because it's usually collected at the building permit stage or the subdivision stage.
Okay, because this came into us before, so we no longer.
But you will, as a community, the ACC will go out to the community for consultation.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's it.
Yes, sir.
Now, there's a proposed hotel, I believe, beside Milos in the little parking lot there, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I've heard different discussions around, I don't know, I'm new to this, I'm new to the area here, but I'm just trying to pick up bits and pieces. So, did that ever come?
That came to
before?
us, yes.
All right, and then we made recommendations.
Yes.
Huge
accordingly?
number of recommendations.
Yeah, a lot, yeah.
A lot of recommendations.
Yeah, okay.
That's actually one of the ones that she was just referring to.
Oh, is that right? Okay, great.
yeah, the developer answered questions, I believe as well too, did they not?
They were here to give a
Yeah.
presentation. Actually, the developer and the owners were here and they answered questions. And in fact, they proposed changes here on the spot based on our comments.
Fantastic, okay, that's good, I mean, that's what I want to,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna be sitting here and just going, okay, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, 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 no.
Which I don't think it's
Trust
the
me,
case,
it's not like
don't get me wrong, I don't think it's the case.
It's
Okay.
not like that.
Now, that's
Not at all.
going back before council now, or has it been back?
Where is it?
It's gone, it's been approved, they're working on their various conditions to get it, so they can go get the building permit.
Right, and so that will not come back across these tables?
No,
Okay,
But there
now
have,
that's a new development for that site comes in,
right,
there
something different from what they're proposing.
there have been there was one other one in particular that came across our desk twice here, because the first one was so out in the left field
Oh,
that we had so many recommendations to make,
Yeah.
that they shrunk it a lot. They came back to us and said, well, how about this? And it was like, okay, now we're,
they took 80 units out of it,
Mhm.
Okay, can I know about this one down here, what's happened to that one?
511,
Yes.
that's the one you're talking about.
no, Glencoe, you're talking about.
Oh, Glencoe?
Yes,
Oh, no, it's stopped.
it stopped. Okay.
Yeah, they also had a lot of things to address.
Ponder.
right,
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Developments, they start, they stop.
okay, so that was one of my
Picked up
questions.
by somebody else.
Development has been going on and off since I've been here, and I've been here since 2016.
They're putting new roofs on now, so
And-
obviously.
And I know the owners from the early 1990s, they were toying with it too. So,
So it's been going on for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, yes.
yeah, it does actually, this is good. This is
And I
very
wonder,
good.
can we make some distinction between our participation on the committee and our voice as a private citizen? For example, what if, as an individual on the APC, I'm the outlier and everyone else supports something that I don't support within the confines of the APC? That's fine. But then how do I, as an individual, press on with the concern? It's hypothetical now.
You can still, at the public hearing, you can still go out and say, my name is Kim, and I live at whatever your address is, and I'm opposed. Don't have to tell anybody you're on the APC. You just say, I live here and I'm opposed to this application because of whatever your reasons are.
I only brought that up because I thought that would have been an important distinction to
Yeah.
make in the earlier confusions about our roles, both as a regulatory agency, but also as a
Private
as
citizen.
citizens. Yes.
Yeah, you can still participate as a private citizen. There will be community meetings and there will also be public hearings. There could be a community meeting that's set up as part of the referral process. But you gotta remember, if you go to the community meeting first, you have to come back to this table with an open mind. If you don't have an open mind, which means you've made up your decision, you have to excuse yourself.
And just to jump in, the public hearing is normally held after the
Yeah.
APC, so. So hopefully that kind of mitigates that, but the being on the APC is in no way, intended to limit your rights as a private citizen. You can write to council as part of the public hearing process as well, if you know, you're not comfortable speaking at the public hearing, but, yeah, it typically happens after, so the conflict of interest piece can be addressed.
And there would be any information given to us here as part of the APC, it wouldn't be public knowledge.
Oh, yeah, it is, because
So what-
all of that information,
Fiduciary responsibilities in that respect. So if there's something we find here, to go, wait a second, but it gets through here, you know, I can't take that information and do anything else with it, right? Because I've got to.
No. What we get is public knowledge already, right?
What this committee, or sorry, this commission gets is all public, so this is all open.
That was my, thank you.
yeah,
Yep.
So you can speak about it, yep, no
Okay.
problem.
you have to vote in front of the public too.
And I know it's all recorded.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to double check that.
One time they used to have it in the legislation, you could go off to a corner and vote, and then come back and tell everybody you voted however.
Okay.
That's how they did it.
It seems odd.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad they changed it.
Yeah.
And at one time too, people would, because it didn't specifically say it's gonna be an open public area, they would go and have it in somebody's kitchen.
Oh, God, not into that, no.
No,
Not my
it was
kitchen,
not very transparent for a while.
not my kitchen.
But anyhow, things have changed. And that, believe it or not, those changes have been through my planning career.
Okay, that looks good.
Alrighty.
Do you know of anything coming down the pipeline?
Not at this time, I don't think.
No.
So are we, still questions or,
Yes.
okay,
You want questions?
are there other questions to, Ken?
There is none.
Okay, so,
And also remember too, when you get an application or a package, feel free to call the office if you don't understand anything.
Yep.
Ask for myself or Amanda.
I might not be able to answer some of those questions, but I can try my best.
and might not be in town.
No, but you have my email address. I do check my email every day.
That looks good. Good,
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is this now's a good time to tell you the exams in 20 minutes?
I've been making notes, we're good.
exactly, yeah. Okay,
Alrighty, well, I hope that helps. And again, please remember, I won't,
yeah, I was just gonna say, can we have a motion, to adjourn?
Second,
Second, all in favor? Done, thank you.
Thank you.
make it official.
I kind of wanted to have the questions about what's coming down the pipe after the adjournment.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Any idea what's happening with the bungalow property? Where's that at?
what's the bungalow?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
the, by the boat launch ramp. 500 Esplanade?
Rendell Park.
Or Rendell Park, yeah.